G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Supercoach Swordplay podcast. You're on with me, Janath, and I've got a very special guest from Wooden Spoon Data. I've got Woody, who, if some of you guys have watched this video, probably watched Great Man's video talking about the optimal way to build the perfect Supercoach team for 2026. I won't touch too much on it because I'll hand it straight over to Woody to talk about that and more as we talk about traps who are over 10% owned at this time. We're recording on the 1st of February 2026, who we think are 10% owned or more, but we consider to be a trap. Without further ado, Woody, take the floor. How are you, mate?
Very good, Janath, and yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to meet you. You've been watching you guys for quite some time now, and seeing all the hard yards you've put in. So I figured one day, if I'm gonna have to join you, I'll have to do some hard yards too. And yeah, if you want, go look at the video. It's done well so far. Does a whole way of mathing out sides and whatnot. But yeah, it was good fun. So it'll be fun to chat about some other stuff too.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't seen the video yet, we'll put the link to that video down in the description, so it's an easy way for you guys to go into that. I guess without further ado, we should probably talk about what parameters we put in. Obviously, we brought over a data expert here. I like my stats as well, so we're going to be talking a lot about stats, taking an analytical sort of point of view to the players that we're going to talk about, not so much gut feel in this episode. But I guess we'll talk about the defenders first. So when we think about over 10% owned defenders, we're going to exclude the rookies. So those are your Seek Hewlin, Josh Lindsay, Jai Sarong, Sam Grill, Josh Gibcus, Farrow, Carmichael, Dean types. So if we take them away, there's actually only 9 players that are over 10% owned in defense. Well, let's say 10. We can add in Clark and Whitfield that are at 10% owned as recording. So we started with, let's say, the 2 big ones, Rosie and Naz, at 57% owned and 56% owned respectively. I've currently got both in my side, so I don't necessarily see them as traps. Woody, do you have an opposing opinion on either of them, or do you have anything to suggest that they may not be the best pick this year?
The only worries I have at all would be for Rosie. I think Naz is pretty clearly going to be, if not number 1, number 2. From my point of view with Rosie, the only issue I have, and it's something I did want to discuss with you as well, is a bit of role. Obviously, we want to make sure he is on the halfback flank, getting that sort of release from halfback. But I've noticed some people mentioning how they think with the new last touch rule that there might be some benefit for halfback flankers, getting the kick. But Janath, you're a Carlton man, and I was kind of hoping DR was here for this point, so I didn't rub it too much in your face. But you obviously would have seen the sort of running out of defence in the sort of situation that happened there. My worry is players from halfback flank might actually be the one committing that offence more often than others, and Rosie has a few things that make me wonder if he might succumb to those point losses. I'm not necessarily worried about it. I still think he probably will be a top 6 player. I'm still picking him up myself. But yeah, that being said, he's got the only that's the only real worry I have. Do you have much thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you raised, Woody, because look, I think the superficial AFL fan, when you see the rules, probably it may mean an extra kick here or there for a player like a halfback or wings type player. But personally, I think that what this rule will encourage is more run and gun through the corridor. As a Blues fan, like you mentioned before, we do not use the corridor at all. We just go down the line. It's so safe. Vossi really doesn't put the handbrake off really at all. But I think for players like Rosie and Naz for that same thing, that are both really good kicks, what their respective coaches might encourage with this rule is to take on the corridor a bit more. And yes, whilst it may mean that you might have some more turnovers going back the other way, it probably can also mean that they're more likely to try to spot up an open player in the corridor. And as we know with the Supercoach weighting, when you hit targets, when you can lace out plays, Dane Zorko has been a proponent of this and probably carried his scoring a fair bit, is hitting up targets in the corridor that are involved in score involvements, which is probably the more sustainable way of getting score involvements as opposed to going down the boundaries. That's where from that analytical perspective I said. Woody, do you sort of have anything you would suggest from a tactical standpoint we may see differently?
No, I think you're on the money there. I think that's going to be the gold standard moving forward. I think going around the boundary is fraught with more danger than ever. You're just asking to give away the footy. So, I think you're right. The question in that regard for me becomes, all right, well, how good are the players at hitting their targets? Naz is quite threatening and often gets scoring chance. But at the same time, if you were to look at players that have kind of hit that sort of 100 mark over the last year or so, he technically comes down as one of the less accurate ones. So, that is only a slight worry in that regard. That being said, Naz, Rosie, they probably do go down more the guts. They're fast. They can get a handball off if need be, get the 1-2 happening. So, I'm not as worried with those two. I do have a few under the sort of 500 mark that have a bit of ownership that I'm worried about.
And who might those players be, Woody?
We'll start off with number one. I think Miles Bergman is just a trap, to be honest. And got a few notes here. So I either had to write them down digitally or in my paper. So I picked up a pen and paper. But yeah, I've got a few things here. And in 2025, he got 7 games over the 100 mark, and of that, he scored 114.6 on average. For the 12 games he didn't get 100, it was 64.1. So the dichotomy between his best and his worst is quite big. I'd also say there was only 5 games before last year in which he scored over 100 as well. So it does seem like he's trending in the right direction, but, will that grow further? He probably doesn't, again, sort of have a massive growth there, in my opinion. So I think, if we could get him 50-50 split of over 100 under, that's not a bad start, but that floor needs to raise as well. And then you kind of look at his points per minute. I haven't seen massive signs of change across his history. I also look at kind of his projections as well when you consider time on ground or a few other things. And you're kind of left with going, all right, I don't know if this player's going to make me enough money to be a top 6 player. I don't think he's going to be in that category. And I'm not sure that at 100K less than being a top 6 player that it's worth getting him, to be honest, because it's, if you were going to get the money you needed out of him, he'd just be a top 6 player. So I kind of just don't think he's going to get it done for me. What's your thoughts?
And it's a very interesting take that you have there, Woody, because with players like Bergman, those ones that have graduated from defensive roles into the midfield, like we've seen with Jordan Dawson, Hayden Young, Ed Richards, these type, that their natural floor from tackles, from marks are going to be quite high. It's just a matter of, can they win their own ball? And I think that's where I'm at with Bergman, is I haven't seen him win his own ball as much as I would have seen from a Young, from a Richards, from a Dawson in years gone by. Now, the thing that's quite interesting for me, looking at his CBAs, with centre bounce attendances, supplementing that with sort of the stuff that you're talking about. So when he does get CBAs, he gets a good clip. So in the games where he's gone above 50%, he's had 3. So he's had 6 games above 50% CBAs last year, and 3 of them were above 80%. 82 against Adelaide round 9, 89 against us, Carlton in round 16, 83 against Hawthorn in round 19. And the thing with Bergman that I feel is I'd say the main concern for me, I'll even so round 9, Bergman went 104, round 16 he went 121, and round 19 he went 76. So probably too small for sample size with the CBAs. The thing that sort of concerns me with Bergman, taken away from the data side, is when we look at Port Adelaide as a side. Last year, when Sir Thatcher or Radically or one of the defenders went down, Bergman was too good of a miss to fix it. And he goes back into defense and he can't win his own ball. So talking about everything that you said there, Woody, he has a really good above 100, but there were 3 scores that he had last year, 4 scores between 70 and 100. Everything else was above 100 or below 70, which is pretty worrisome But at the same time, I guess the reason why we're looking at Bergman as an option is last year he was a Mr. Fix-It. If Carr comes out and says he is a true and through midfielder, does that change your mind at all?
I'm not convinced. Because I did towards the back of last year. I believe he got 2 matches over 100 points in which he was tagging, and for me, if you're a midfielder and you're tagging, your limit is around that 100, max 110. You're just not finding the pill yourself. You're stopping your opponent. So I'd be worried that he spends too much time being that defensive midfielder. And there's too many questions for me at this point. For now, to start with him, I personally am not going to do it. And I think he's a player you could pick up if the stars start aligning. It works. You probably do have to get it. That being said, I just don't see him above some of the players that are just never going to drop from their price point at the top. So money for me is at the moment better spent either going higher or lower than him.
And a player that will go to the ones higher or lower than him, but a player that's probably around that range, well, 2 of them. Colby McKercher at North Melbourne is probably the breakout. And then Nick Newman at 439K is probably the player that is someone that I talked about this on a previous podcast as well. He's done it before, gone back-to-back years with 100 prior to last season. But he's at a discount. I think as a community, we get sucked into this. We want to get the breakout type, like the McKerchers, like the Bergman, but we've got 100 guy here in Newman. Now, yes, he's coming off a knee injury, not an ACL, a patella fracture. Is there something, patella injury, is there something that you think could separate out Newman, McKerch, and Bergman in terms of where you sit on them as traps or successful picks?
Yeah. So for me, I saw enough. Okay, so we're going to have to decide which player I'm talking about first. I'll start with Kobe McKercher. To keep it simple, I think he's more of a trap than Newman. Again, you've broken it down pretty well. I mean, we get drawn into the potential a lot. For me, I'm almost after safety in my numbers more. So I'm leaning towards of this group of 3. I'm leaning towards Newman. If I'm going to explain why McKerch is not the guy for me, there's a few things. Like, he's shown some good numbers towards the back end of last year, but his overall points per minute has gone down from his first year to second. So it's a slight point against, right? So it's not massive, but then you look at his history in 2025, he only had 4 matches that hit 1 point per minute. And you're going, okay, probably need to go a little bit higher than that, or just do it more often, right? One of the two. I do think there's the potential of that happening. And my lowest projection has him losing nothing. So there's not much risk in taking him in a lot of regards. But my highest projection has him maybe just getting past 100. And that's edge of top 6. Again, looking like it's that question of, do I spend that extra 50, 70K now, or towards the back end of the year? Am I sitting there going, geez, I'm losing 5 bloody points around, and I don't want to use a trade on him because he's one of the least of my worries. He just seems like he's going to be a headache and going to be one that I can't move if I can move at all. So I'm just not sure that it's worth picking him up. My average projection has him going at 92, which would only be a 50K rise. And then you need to spend another 50, 75 before you're happy.
So, Woody, just for those that haven't watched your original video that you go through sort of what the parameters are, can you sort of describe what you take into? So you've obviously got the historic data. What do you take into calculations for players' natural growth? And what does it mean by a player's highest projection or their lowest projection? Like, how do you get to those numbers?
Yeah, so I've got four different projections that I'm using. I could obviously use more, but I've found it's pulled out some fairly reasonable numbers, so I'm happy with it. But my lowest projections generally tend to be weighted projections, mostly because I've tried to keep them on the lower side. Linear projections get a little bit out of hand, so they're the two types that I use. Okay, to explain the four different, it gets a little bit lost here, but we've got regular points, and then we've got time on ground or points per minute base points. So I look at both of them and do projections off both and then come to an average. Generally, the weighted's built to be a little bit under what you'd expect, because linear can get quite out of hand if you let it. Likewise, I've put a cap on linearity because often you don't see a player often get more than 150% of a previous score. It basically has never happened. So I've capped it a little bit lower than that. So a player can't improve more than 140%. And I come to the averages between that. So I look at what the weighted projections, which are normally lower, would say. They look at the last 5 years, do a bit of calculation, and come back with a number. And then I look at that number and I go, all right, well, where is that in terms of cost? How much does their potential improvement or decrease change their costing? So that's why McKercher, I've got at 92 with a 50k rise. His best would be, double checking, is 104 with 110 point rise and just on the edge of top six, sorry. And Bergman is a fair bit lower than that. So yeah, I'm almost not considering him. In terms of Newman, the best part about having somebody that has a full 5 years of history is it's less likely to be volatile, and you can get more consistent numbers. It's pretty consistently averaging about 95 when I look at numbers for Newman, a little bit below what I'd want, but it's the highest guarantee of these. And his top end doesn't look as crazy as McKercher particularly, but he gives you the more guarantee of points.
Yeah. And I guess just the last sort of defender that I want to talk in this mix, I'm very curious on this because I think there are a lot of mouths to feed. And if DR was here, he'd probably have a bit to say about one of the Brizzy boys, Kadeen Coleman. So you've got Zorko, you've got Fletcher, you've got Wilmot. I'm not sold. Are you sold on Coleman as a pick this year, Woody, at 233k?
Not as a keeper, but if you have enough funds for considering him a rookie upgrade, then yeah, I think he is a worthwhile pick. Personally, I don't think I will go in, just because I think his earnings will be similar to players that'll be lower. And yeah, again, I don't think he'll be a keeper. So I think I'll have to move him. I'd rather save 50 odd K and get a Grills or a Farrow or somebody of that ilk.
And that, I think, is probably where I stand as well. Is the thing with Coleman, this is one of those things that data can't say. And I don't think with Coleman, whether I start him or not, it's going to come down to data. I think it's going to come down to how he looks in preseason and in round zero and where he plays. If he's getting contest, I saw a tweet the other day that he was stamping his foot into the ground after every kick to make sure that his knee integrity is intact. Like, those are sort of the red flags that you just really can't go into the season with, because then you're in the trouble with a Coleman. Yes, you can downgrade and bank some money, but it's very hard to get up from 233k to anyone substantial, given we probably don't have many defenders in the 440 to 233k bracket at all. So just something to consider there. I guess we'll go into the midfielders then, Woody, and there are some popular names here. There are a lot of DPP names that we'll talk about in their other lines. I guess if we took away all the rookies and all the DPPs, the most popularly picked midfield is Sack Butters at 54%. Where do you stand him in terms of projection? He's in a contract year. Does that come into your calculations at all? Where does your projection see him sitting?
in terms of the actual numbers that come out of the computer, no, it's not in my calculations. But in terms of what I use those numbers and think about myself, yeah, I think he probably improves on what I've got. I've got him actually having a slight decrease to 117. I don't think that'll be the case. I genuinely think, if anything, you're probably looking at an increase of a similar number, just short of 130-ish.
Yeah.
This is actually one thing I was going to touch on with you. I think, and it again comes down to a bit of maths sort of stuff, but I think there's three midfielders that are going to lead the way this year in Bont, Butters, and Dacos.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go without them. I don't think you can start the season particularly without them. Looking at history, if you were to, miss out on the best player and pick the fifth best player every year, right? You got number 2 and 3, but you missed one and got 5. You'd be losing over 10 points a match. And right now, I see a lot of people fading Bont and picking up players that will be 10 points lower than Bont a match. And all you're doing is forcing yourself to spend 700,000, maybe a little less, sure, but no more so than like the second best player. So for me, I can't really see a giant lot. The worst I can see Bont getting down to would be 650. Butters would be about 640, and then Dacos, I'd see him staying exactly the same. So I genuinely don't think you can miss out on those three, because if they are all three to go at about 130, and then player number 4 in the midfield goes at 120, you're losing so many points per week that you just can't catch up.
Yeah. It's very interesting to say that, Woody, because like I probably done well in the last couple of seasons picking off those exact names at cheap prices. And the thing is, none of them are immune to a bad game. So for instance, if we took Bont last year, he started the year injured, obviously. Then he went 159, 128, 141. Everyone was clamoring to get him in at more expensive than his starting price of 693. But within 3 weeks of scores of 99, 141 SM, which aren't bad scores, he's all the way back down to 643. And so it's very hard to maintain that high price. And with Butters, the reason being that he's probably value, he's got scores of 53 and 45 last year. If you take them out, he's in the 126 sort of range. And same goes to Dacos. They score. I think it's a very interesting point you've raised in terms of the way I see it is, if I can get a Bont at 700K, that's averaging 125, that's something that I know will happen. But if I've got a Goulden at 566K, about 100 and, well, what is Bont? Sorry. Bont is 706K. Goulden's 140K cheaper. So with the magic number, the number that sort of price is determined by, that's probably a 30-point difference there. Now, if I think that Goulden's going to go at a 105, 110 clip, yes, he's not getting the 130, the Bont will, but from a statistical metric, that means I have 140K to upgrade on a player at the bottom end that can help balance those things out. Now, in a best 18 format, you probably do want those 130, 135 guys. But in terms of building team value, job security in particular, that's where I probably lean the latter, go in that Goulden type and a more secure on-field option compared to a Bont and a rookie that has poor job security. So I think we defer in that a little bit, Woody, but it goes to show that there's no one way to play it as well, because I can't see a realistic world where I would start Butters, Bont, and Dacos, especially with Bont playing 6 of last year's top 8 sides in. Sorry, just let me bring this up. So he plays 6 of the top 8 sides from last year in his opening stretch. So it's not an easy stretch, but we know Bont. He's pretty matchup proof most of the time. That's just one thing that I would raise in that regard. Woody, I assume that you're not in that camp, are you?
No. I think about it like compound interest, because I am not too worried about my team value in a lot of ways. Maybe I should be more so. I have not done as well as you guys in the past, to be fair. but my goal is to have as many points on field as possible. So with 18 rounds, I actually think that might help teams that don't have Bond more so than not, because they've got the bottom players on my side might not be as good as the bottom players on their side, and they might be able to catch points easier. But at the top, it's so hard to catch points. And then you're forced, instead of, I also think longer term, you go down the season and you're like, okay, well, yes, I have the potential to make value, but I also have the potential of it not working out, and I have to get a trade done. I have the potential of quite a few things going wrong. For me, I'm okay with losing a bit of value, provided I'm consistently getting more points. And that's why I think Bont is one that's hard to miss, because even if he does drop to a 125 or a little bit lower, you're only getting similar numbers from maybe Dacos and Butters. I don't think anybody else quite hits those numbers. And yeah, you might be losing 10 points plus a game just by missing out on one of those three. So for me, I'd rather start with him, gain 10 plus points at a time. If I lose a bit of value, fair enough. But by the time you and I are both buying players, I'm hopefully buying a Goulden that's proven himself, because I'm not sure that I would pick Goulden, to be fair. Or, I just don't have to get the very most expensive player. Hopefully, my goal is to pay less throughout the season and get more points up front. So yeah, that's why I feel like you kind of have to start with those three, because as much as you might lose 5 or so points off their actual value, it's not going to be caught up by a player below them. Yeah, that's my thought process.
And that's totally fair. And it shows that there's no one way to play Supercoach either. And I guess having Bont, Dacos, Butters in your side gives more captaincy options as well. In a true sort of guns and rookies approach, you could go that way, knowing that Bont, Dacos, Butters, they're going to be in the top 8 midfielders come the end of the season. Like, that's just a given, right? So you already have them in your side. And there are some coaches that wouldn't start any of them. I'm probably more in the middle, because I do want to have a captaincy option here or there, but I also do want to pick off more, like from a fixtures perspective. Again, just shows that there's no one way to play. You talk about Goulden. Now, Goulden's at 32%. I'll try to see if there's any other players. So I think Goulden, Sarong at 13% as well. And there was one other. Goulden's, yeah. So Goulden, Sarong, and I'll also put a Noah Anderson into that mix. Noah Anderson, Matt Rowell into that mix at 12 and 11%. So 3 of the 4 of them have early buys, which I'm not sure how that looks in terms of optimizing from your perspective. Sarong's the one without the early buy, had a relatively down season last year compared to his normal standard. Where do you sit on these sort of players? And I know that you're coming from the side that you're probably not going to start these types of guys compared to those big 3 that you mentioned before. But is there any sort of numbers that you can suggest that they are fine selections, and then you can sort of build your squad around these types that could appreciate a bit in value?
Yeah, so personally, I think you might be able to fit one of these players. It'll come down to structuring and who you think will achieve what. But yeah, so Goulden, who else were we talking about? Goulden, Anderson, Rowell to a degree. I probably wouldn't put Rowell and Anderson in the same category. That extra 50 or 70 odd K, I think the points value between what you'll get between a Sarong or a Goulden and them is too minor a difference for that 70K. So I'm honestly not considering either of them. In terms of a trap, I think Goulden almost is a trap. The reason I think that is because I've never seen him. He's never really gone much past 110, and when he has, he's good. But it comes down to a similar problem that Bergman has, in that his high scores are very high, and his low scores are unfortunately fairly equally as low. For me, he could be quite good, but having just come off of an injury, gotten a little bit of into him last year, which is great. I'm just not sure that I've seen enough yet. I would prefer picking him up throughout the season than starting him, just because again, kind of looking at the highest and lowest projections, my highest projection had him at 121, which would be, about 100K more than he is now, which is awesome. But again, still below that threshold that I think Dacos, Butters, and Bont could get to of 125 to 130. And while it could work out, I also have his low projection quite low. So I'm just not, I like potentially losing money. So I just don't know if I can trust him. I have him averaging out at 102. For me, that's not good enough. For selection. I would slightly consider Sarong more. I think Sarong's I think he's got more potential to get back to the level he was than Goulden has. Goulden's best hasn't been sustained at 115 plus. Mm-hmm. Sarong has for multiple seasons. So I think if you were tossing up between those two, it's Sarong. I mean, maybe you can fit Anderson, maybe you can fit Rao. I do think both are fairly good picks, but just the way I've structured my side, they're too expensive for me, and I think the points difference isn't grand enough.
Yeah. And one player that I didn't mention there, I've got in my side I'm very hot on, is a Finn Callaghan. Now, leading the league in handball receives last year. Yes, he doesn't have an early buy, but is shared only with St Kilda, and then the mid-season buy only with Richmond. So basically, doesn't cancel out. He does still plays one less game in the rounds that matter. But in the way that you see someone like a Callaghan, do you view him any differently to the other four? And again, he probably has more natural progression than the other four who are at least 1 year older in the AFL system. Where do you sit on the Callaghan pick?
Yeah, he's
as a scrap or as a good player, good selection.
I think he's appropriately priced for now, at least. The good part about Callaghan is he broke out a fair bit last year. Now that can kind of go one of two ways. Either he still has a little bit of growth left in him. You're not likely to see a similar level of breakout. It's just a 30-point jump to another 30-point jump isn't really going to happen. Though the problem with linear projections is they think that is somewhat possible, which is why I've built projections that do a little bit lower to average it all out. But that is where I'd kind of say he's got a lot of potential. If he were to keep growing, it's a great pick. Really, really good pick. Maybe not quite at that top three players still, but still a very good pick. The other side of the coin, should he not maintain this, continue growing, you do see regression sometimes after these breakout years. It does happen. It tends to be about halfway between where they were to where they broke out, like roughly in that point. So if that were the case, you're probably looking at about a 95-ish, 95, 100, in which, it's not the best pick. Obviously, you wouldn't be happy with that. I don't think that's going to happen personally. And I think that's the judgment call you have to make with these numbers. You get a lot of information to kind of go, all right, well, this would be a bad case scenario. This would be a good case scenario. Yeah. What do I think is more likely? Personally, I think he's appropriately priced. I think he might grow a little bit. For me, I'm not sure I'll pick him. I've definitely been considering him a lot. But for now, he's not in my side.
Yeah. Awesome. And to end the midfields, I'll give you three mid prices who they're very interesting. I think one of them for me is a lock in Hayden Young. Well, lock very loosely in terms of he's the type of player. So I'm talking about Hayden Young, Harley Reid, and Darcy Parish. Those are all players that have more than 10% ownership. Each of them have their own reasons why they're at this price. Young and Parish, injury. Reid just not really getting it together. Too many negative stats, that sort of thing last year. with Young. Now, Young and Parrish have both been over 600K back in their primes. Well, Young more so in the last couple of years, but Parrish a little bit longer than that. The reason why I'm so hot on Hayden Young is, yes, he is buy free, just like the other two, but the way that he does score points, his high points per minute, which is something as a stat that I'm very not attached to, but I take a lot of credence in. The marks, the tackles, but also the way that when he is on form, he can rack up points very quickly with the points per minute, but also in a sustained manner. So in terms of he's not a 121 week 60 guy the next week, that he can back it up. Where do you sit on these three as a trap or as sort of a justifiable start in selection, Woody?
All three do have their reasons to pick them. If I did, I'll be real. I thought about calling Harley Reid a trap. The reason being, I think Harley needs about a 95 to be a good pick. He's going to have to still be moved on. Like, I just can't see him getting past 105. I think he goes 90 to 95 in that realm, but he needs a 95 to be worthwhile. So I don't think you pick him. I also don't think it's enough reason to call him a trap, unfortunately for me, because it'd be great. But that being said, no, I think they all have a reason to pick them. I'm avoiding Harley because I don't think he can get the numbers I want. I'm also avoiding Parrish. To be honest, I don't have a great reason of avoiding Parrish. I've just been burnt in the past, and I've never cared a super, like, this is the first year I've gone, all right, I'm going to do math. I'm going to see how good I can do. But in the past, I've picked Parrish up in similar positions, being like, oh man, if he could get his body right, we're good to go. He just can't. He just never can get his body right. So, I mean, if he can, he's a great pick. He's a brilliant pickup. I just don't have the trust in him. Beyond that, I agree. I mean, I think Hayden Young's almost a lock. If his body stays healthy and like 50% of people or whatever have him and you don't, it's such a bad situation to be in. So I just think there's safety in numbers in a lot of ways. And when you've got a lot of people jumping on speculation, it almost reduces the risk factor a lot because other people are taking on the same risk. So yeah, I think Hayden Young is almost a must-have. Darcy Parish probably could be picked by those braver than me, but I would avoid Harley. I don't think he's quite got enough to get what you need.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Like, in terms of a Parish, 2021, 114.1, 2022, 111, 2023, 108. Like, yes, these are nice, but in 2026, I don't think this is what we should be forecasting our projections of Darcy Parish on. He was probably the number one midfielder at Essendon in those years, with alongside Sack Merritt. He wasn't really getting the attention, but now you've got more pieces going through the midfield. You draft new midfielders. You've had those injury concerns. We've got to temper expectations. And if that pulls you back to sort of that 95, 100 on a good day, then that's where the issue lies. I feel with Parish, even though he is very, very modestly priced at 335K. Those are the midfielders then, Woody. Let's talk about Ruckman. So I'm going to put Sam Draper in the forwards bucket for this. But there are 4 Ruckman currently that are more than 10% owned. That being Tristan Cherry at 687K, Luke Jackson at 611, Max Gawn at 689.6, and Tim English at 601K. Off those 4, where, if you had to rank them 1 through 4 in terms of most likely to be a trap to least likely to be a trap, where would you trap relative to their price as well? So where do you sit on those 4, Woody?
That's tough. That's tough. Relative to price is a difficult adjustment there. But if I'm just going to call like player I think screws up and you pick them R1 or R2, I think English is a worry. I've never really seen English as a leaping ruckman, and people keep telling me it's going to work, and I don't see how it really helps him in any regard. So I'd hold out on English. Like if it works, you're a genius. I don't know, man. But yeah, like beyond that, I'm a bit worried about Gorn. His price point. I mean, it just doesn't get easier to jump as you get older, right? Like, so these change in rules, despite the fact it's probably not going to hinder him as much as other rucks, I just don't know if it keeps him in that top echelon. Likewise, he's already had an injury to start the year. Yes, it's like a finger injury or something, but yeah, it's just enough for me to go between him or Cherry, who's a little bit less priced. I mean, I'm going to pick Cherry in that situation.
Yes. Yeah.
Beyond that, I think the last ruck you mentioned was Luke Jackson. He's a difficult one for me to pick. It might be the one that works, especially now that Darcy seems to be injured. If they're going to just sit Cox as kind of a forward or maybe a backup ruck at points, and Jackson's a proper ruck, then yeah, I mean, he might be the pick. I found rucks difficult. I don't think there is a pure trap here. I think there's a few situations you can get yourself in that would trap you, though. Personally, I think you kind of got to watch a little bit for Reedy at R3. I don't know that he's going to get tons of points, for one. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a great pick. I think he'll get enough points to be worthwhile, but I don't think you'd want him in place of DeConning or Cherry or Jackson or even English, right? I think it's a little bit of a worry in that regard. And that in that regard, I'd put him as a forward if you are going to take him, and then open up your R3 to other options that might be better. I mean, we've got the potential of, I think is it Vigo Visentini? I forget which Visentini.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Essendon. Dante also potentially could be getting the rollover Sweet, it seems as well, but on price point, you're probably not looking at him. The other one I think you need to consider is McAdams, because he is, locked in as a pure ruckman. You'd just be forced to move Reedy around if you were to have him. Likewise, if you are to pick up Cooper Duff Tytler, you'll need to have them in the forward line because you are probably going to need Visentini or McAdams, one of the two. Yeah. So I think that's a situation you could trap yourself in if you're not aware.
McAdams?
I think it's McAdams. McAndrews.
McAndrew at Adelaide.
Yeah, he'll get the nod for sure over Riley O'Brien.
Okay.
100%. So you kind of need to pick him up. Other than that, I don't think there's a ton of pure traps. I think DeConning offers a fair bit of value if what we were to see early last year were to continue. But I think most people are fairly aware of who they're going to pick, and I think we've gone over them mostly.
Yeah, and I think the issue with Jackson, so in 2023, with Sean Darcy on the side 87, without him 118, so a difference of 31. 2024 with Darcy 84, without Darcy 106, 22-point difference. And in 2025 with Darcy 99.9, without Darcy 137.1. So yes, Jackson has probably made the evolution to become a midfielder even in the presence of Sean Darcy, but his best work isn't as a midfielder. It's as a standalone ruckman. So at 611k, I find it hard to justify, and that's why I have him as the most likely to be a trap off the four. And he's actually the second most owned ruckman behind Cherry and ahead of Gorn and English. And I find that one hard, even if Sean Darcy has a calf niggle, that he's probably going to be right for round one. And Justin Longmire hasn't shown no sort of hesitancy to put Sean Darcy back into the side as soon as he is fit. And that's where I feel like that's one of those players where if he was 511k, sure, but 611k, when the gap to a Gorn is only 78, when English is cheap and he's the number one and only ruck, that's where it becomes a bit more difficult to justify, even if the new rules may work in his favour. Is there anything else you want to add on the rucks, Woody? Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried, and I need to see the start of the year first and some of the points that come out of that, because I'm just so worried that the best ruckman this year is going to be Jackson and DeConning, because everybody's been like, yeah, they're the best leaping rucks. And what if they are just the best rucks? And I could save myself a ton of money by picking them.
Yeah.
So it's one I'm not willing to take tons of risks, but geez, I'm warming to the idea.
The issue from just this logistical standpoint, though, and that's probably the elephant in the room, both of them, is the fact they're going to be co-rucking. Like both of them, DeConning in particular, like as Dia and I have talked about on our first seasonal podcast, if the Marshall trade went through, the Supercoach ramifications in picking both of those ruckmen, DeConning and Marshall, would have been so high, given their value, given all of that. So it does make it a bit difficult. We just have to play the hands that we are dealt, unfortunately. And at this stage, Cherry's the one that's locked in for me, given that if you took out his first 5 weeks, he would have averaged 135. Like the hamstring niggles and all of that, like he is the type of guy that I don't think the rules will really affect positively or negatively. He's never been the leaping ruckman, but he's also hasn't been the player that sits back down the line to grab intercept marks and not make the stoppages. So there's a couple of ruck rules, and one that I think a lot of coaches are probably overlooking is the fact there's no ruck there's much shorter time for ruck nominations, and players that like Cherry that are always just around the ball should have no issues with that. It may be the lumbering rucks like Gawn and Darcy who are camping down the line, waiting for the intercept, but there's a stoppage further afield that may struggle to get to those. So there's going to be pros and cons, and we'll get to see that quite early, especially in round 0, as to what that sort of looks like in actual gameplay. Let's talk about the forwards then, Woody.
Yeah, let's get to it.
And go straight to the top here with Harry Sheezel. Now, I've seen some people are avoiding him. Personally, I can't justify going against him. It's not because he doesn't necessarily present value at 580k. I just don't see, if you're not going with Sheezel, who are you going with in his position? Where do you sit on Sheezel, Woody?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think I think he'd actually make the midfield top 8, and I just can't see why you wouldn't get him as a forward. Appropriately priced. Like if you pick number 2 forward, you might be losing 10 points. Like there's a good chance that the good forwards sit at 105 plus, and the guys that don't quite make it are less than 95. So yeah, I just think he's one of those ones you can't avoid. You need to, like, if you're worried about spending 10 extra K, do it. Like, move things around.
Yeah, that's it. And we'll go straight down the next list of the next person. Sam Flanders at 396k. Any hesitancy in picking him?
I mean, I'm a Saints man. I've kept an eye on what they're doing this preseason. I think if you're avoiding Sam Flanders, you're avoiding winning. So, like, I don't know what to tell you. You know, you have to have him. You have to.
Yeah. That's a great. I think it's one of those players where he feels like a premium, even though he isn't a premium. Like, we've been given a gift. As long as he's put in the role at halfback or in the midfield and not in the forward line, he should be a smash selection. And we'll go to the next set of plays, which I think is the set of plays that. So you probably have Sam Flanders somewhere between F3 or F4. And we're talking about the players in between Sheezel and Flanders here. So I'm talking about Petrarca, Sam Darcy, Cozzy Pickett, Isaac Rankin when he's back. We'll put him into this mix because even though he's not a starting selection, I feel like a lot of coaches would have started him on those 4 plays. So again, Petrarca, Pickett, Sam Darcy, Rankin. Where do you see these sort of blokes as players that either we start or players that we want to trade into?
I would have 3 out of those 4 as the top 6 midfielders, top 6 forwards to end the year. Yeah. I think Petrarca is probably 2 or 3. I think that Sam Darcy, while you won't get consistent good matches out of him, you will get like 140s that help bring that average up. I think he'll just miss out on 100 and might still be number 6. Who else did we have? We had
Rankin.
We had
Rankin.
Rankin and Cozzy, I think, are very similar in terms of how their career pathway has gone, with Rankin getting that sort of midfield minutes, Pickett looking to do that as well. I think Rankin has shown enough at this point to probably be okay with him. I think he also, with Petrarca, with Flanders, I think he sits around that 2 to 4 area. Pickett, I don't think it can happen personally.
Yeah.
It comes down to a thing we've already discussed. Like, you're unlikely to see 2 breakout seasons in a row. It is just so rare that I just couldn't back it. If anything, I'd expect a regression from Pickett this year. Best case scenario would have him kind of moving to 95 to maybe that 100 sort of 6th place best forward sort of realm, but I just can't really see it definitely happening. Whereas I can see Sam Darcy being unstoppable this year. And it's kind of where my mindset's at. I don't know if I can see Pickett go to the midfield without Petrarca, without Clary, and get that extra 10, 15 points. I just don't think it's going to happen. So for me, I'd be leaning towards Sam Darcy as getting that sort of 6th and final spot.
Awesome stuff there. There's just a couple more players we'll talk about. They're all mid prices. Adam Treloar, he's been on a modified program. He's another one that just can't get past injuries. I think it's probably not worth talking about him as much. He's 32% owned, but for me personally, if there's any injury news that came out, he was just a no-go. Even though was good a couple of years ago, he's probably not even in their core 4 mix. Like Joel Frazier's took the leap last year. Ed Richards took the leap last year. Where does Treloar fit into this midfield? Do you have anything that you could give to Treloar owners as to reason why to start him?
I mean, I've all I can say is I've been in your shoes, and at some point you just have to let go. It's not going to work. I so desperately want to start Treloar. Like, we've got news that he's just hurt his hamstring, and don't worry, it'll only be a week. But like, we're getting news first day of Feb or whatever, last day of January, going, yeah, he's already injured. And we've spent the last 3 or so years of him just constantly being injured. I still think back to the time he pulled both hamstrings at once and like had medical doctors around the world discussing his case. So like, I can't do it. And anybody that can do it is way braver than me. I want it to work, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Sam Draper?
Absolute trap. As big a trap as you can get. The biggest trap in Supercoach as of right now.
Elaborate.
I can't figure out why you'd pick him. Okay, so I'm pulling up the book of knowledge again. Hang on. Look, so he's 31% owned, just short of 400k. He's never had a PPM over 0.9. He's never, I don't think, I might be wrong actually. He might have made one season where he's actually not been injured, but I think he's pretty much every year he's copped an injury. Of his games, 78 of them, 16 of them, 20%, have ever gone over 1 ppm. And of that, it went at 102.4 Supercoach. So just like maybe a selection in the forward line, but like tough. And then if you look at like his plus 100 average, less matches than the ppm, only 14, and 109.3. So not bad, but like, you need him as a forward and you need it to work. He's never really shown enough. Like my highest projected average for him comes in at 89. And it's just
not enough.
Like, that's an 85k bonus-ish that you get off of him. You need to trade him. It's just not enough. And like, my lowest average has him going at 75. So he maybe makes like 10k. The overall is sitting just above 80.5. So he gets you a 40k. As far as I can tell, his best case scenario, you just can't keep him, and he doesn't make enough money. I just don't see the appeal in it. Maybe others have seen things that are a bit more kind to him, but I don't see it.
I guess the one thing that sort of, to play devil's advocate a little bit, that I see with Drape is he's probably in his career never been the number one ruck by himself. And it may, yes, there was a period in 2023 where he was. Andrew Phillips was the backup, but he was getting more off the ruck contents there. And even in that case, he just hadn't developed yet. Now he's a free agent, moved to Brisbane. You would hope the injury concerns are behind him, but still we need to see that in action again through that eye test. Darcy Ford is looming. If he's with Darcy Ford, then yeah, I think he is a trap. The one thing that I think that goes for Sam a little bit is how he was looking before his injury last year. So yes, it was a very small sample size with 110 against Melbourne, 105 against West Coast in the game that he got injured, which is why his PPM looks a bit good. Points per minute looks a bit good in those two games. He even scored 103 in his first game for the year, but had a couple of low ones against Riley O'Brien. And I reckon it was Jordan Sweet in the round 3 matchup against Port Adelaide. But that does go for him a little bit. Even in saying that, though, I think it's a wait and see how he looks, that sort of thing. And he could well and truly be a trap. 85K is, it depends where you're coming from, right? If you have seen Sam Draper as a keeper, then yeah, he's a trap because it's not about the money for you. If you're seeing him as a money-making bridge option, then I think 85K could do a few, even though it's not the ideal outcome. Again, though, there is the possibility that he could just be an inconsistent 160, depending if Fort's playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, the worry I have for him is that I can't really see, like, I could never really see him hitting that 110 mark that he has on, or averaged out on 14 occasions. Mm-hmm. I just don't. If I were to be generous to him and say, all right, I can actually believe this number will happen, I could see him maybe pushing past 100, like just past 100. But at that point, it's a lot of risk to take that player. Like, if you're going to do that, like, why aren't you picking Treloar, right? Like, it's 100K less. You're looking at similar numbers, same injury problem history. Yeah. For me, like, Treloar has the same problems as Draper, but he's 100K cheaper, or 90 odd K cheaper. And nobody's really going to pick Treloar now that we've had one scare of an injury. So all I can see really happening with Draper is we have a scare. He's gone for a week, and then it does one or two things. He's either gone for a week and they've said it's been 2 months and everybody gets rid of him and he's fine the next week and everybody's like, shit, what did I do that for? Or, he is gone. They say it's a 1 week injury and he's gone for 2 months, and you're sitting there going, no, he'll be back next week. He'll be back next week. Yeah. I just see too many problems that can be avoided by just not taking him. I don't think the upside's enough.
Yeah. Very, very fair. Well, we'll finish off with one player, then a player that's moved to Gold Coast as well, Jamara Ugle-Hagan. 214K on the Supercoach Swordplay channel. We're not a big proponent of key forwards, but we don't mind a key forward that's in that low 200 range that could pop. Yep. Where do you sit on him? I think it's more so than any data thing here. I think it's more so whether he's in the right mentality to really command the footy down in that forward line.
He's kind of like Kitty Coleman in a way. If you've got the money, he's gonna work. Yeah. Now, if you strapped for cash, like, maybe you're looking at a Marshall, maybe you're looking at a Doveston or somebody of that, like, sort of 100K, getting back to the real rookie sort of area. But I think it'll work. At 215 odd, he needs roughly 65, 60, nearly 70, but 65 to 70. His history shows he can do that. I think, before it really went pear-shaped at the Doggies, he was growing. He was getting a little bit better. Yeah, he's had a year off, so who really knows what happens? But yeah, if you've got the cash, I think it's worth getting him.
And there it is, guys. So we've just gone through sort of the players that are more than 10% owned across the lines with the great help of Woody, who's come through with a lot of projections intermixed within there as well. Hopefully, guys enjoy this sort of, it was more like an analytical look into the Supercoach frame of mind, especially into our frames of mind here. Woody, where can we find you and what do you have in store for us over the coming weeks?
Yeah, so you'll find me at Wooden Spoon Data. Almost all socials are the same thing. If there might be like an underscore there in one or two of them, I don't know. But yeah, it's Wooden Spoon Data. I'm mostly on YouTube. There's a video that these guys saw me through from projecting out team stats and try and fit everybody in as best you could. So if you haven't seen that, go give it a look. It's good fun. Otherwise, you'll see me with a video with you guys fairly soon. We'll be doing a bit of a chat about the plus 100 players, whether they're kind of keepers, starters rather, somebody you should pick up throughout the year, or maybe just somebody you keep an eye on because they're not quite, we haven't quite found out yet. So yeah, the projections look favorably for certain people. As we've said, there's some that, make it blow out. There's some that, reduce, but all in all, the average seems to be fairly close to the mark. So fairly happy with what we've got, and I'm keen to see what you guys think about the plus 100s.
Very, very keen for that. Woody, so we're going to do, this is the home video. We're going to do an away video on Woody's channel as well at the Wooden Spoon Data on YouTube. So again, if you haven't checked out, we'll put the link in the description down below. Thank you guys for hanging in there, hearing us chat about players from an analytical point of view for an hour. Hope you guys have a good weekend. We'll see you guys all for our next video. Peace out, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.